Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Women of HCS event for August. This month, we have a fantastic event for you on the topic of Women of HCS, Unlocking Your Worth, the Power of Self-Advocacy. I am your host, Michael Clarkson, hair color subject to change without notice. So today we're going to kick off with our mission, and then we're going to dive right in. We have a great speaker with us today, Ashley AuBuchon, and we're going to get into the power of self-advocacy, something that I think is really key to great success in this industry. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. Our executive sponsor is Aparna Sharma, and our executive leader who is here with us today is Donna McCullough. Donna, thank you for joining us, and let's kick off with our mission.
Hey, thanks so much, Michael. And I just want to welcome everyone. I'm so excited to see we have over 100 folks on the call, and I anticipate that will continue to climb here over the next few minutes. But I want to talk just briefly about our mission and welcoming all of our women of HCS as well as our male allies that are on the call today. But our mission is really around driving success for women in technology. And I think most of you are aware technology is a very male-dominated field, and so we wanted to promote women and the success and sponsorship and championing women. And if you look at our mission statement, I don't see the highlights in here, but each one has HCS. Like, we will become her champion and sponsor. We will help, consult, and support each other. Our members will be heroic, caring, and strong. And we are the women of HCS. So that is our mission. And I'm excited to be the executive leader of this. We have several great sessions. I think I just talked to Neha yesterday that I'm going to do a session next month. So about my top 10 tips for success in life and work. And but for this session in August, we have Ashley. So I'm very excited to introduce Ashley. She's going to talk to us today about self-advocacy, which is so important. And so Ashley is well known for transforming businesses, careers, and lives through her thought leadership and strategy, change, and communications. With a passion for people and results, Ashley has spent the past 15 years leading transformation programs and global teams at IBM. In her current role in IBM Transformation and Operations, Ashley is focused on sharing IBM's transformation as Client Zero story with our clients, sellers, and business partners to drive revenue growth. And prior to this role, Ashley was an executive assistant to IBM's CEO, Arvind Krishna. So, and there she facilitated his executive leadership team strategy sessions. Ashley has also shared her expertise with over 80,000 professionals and students around the world through business communications, training, coaching, and speaking sessions. So today, as we mentioned, she's going to be sharing her most popular topic, which is how to be an advocate for yourself and others. So Ashley, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm looking forward to it.
All right, amazing. Let me share my screen here. I am so excited to be here talking about my favorite topic, and it's actually a lot of IBMers' favorite topic as well. I have taught this to over 40,000 people, but I have some things I need to tell you up front. First of all, this is not brain surgery. This is not anything maybe new, or maybe it is new for some people, because this isn't typically a topic that we are taught and people tell us we should do. Some of us have figured it out naturally, but others it is not natural. So as we go through this topic, some light bulbs may go off for you. But every time I am preparing for a session talking about how to be an advocate for yourself and others, I think, why am I doing this? This is common sense. And then every time we get in the session and people are like, oh, wow, I've never thought of this, or, oh, I really needed this reminder. And so even for me, I have been teaching this topic for 10 years, and just like a month or two ago, I realized, wow, I haven't practiced what I've been teaching lately. So it's always a good reminder as we go through these materials. So what the agenda is going to look like today is I'm going to cover about 30 or so minutes of content. And then I'm going to ask for a volunteer who wants to just answer a few questions about the first job you ever had. And then we'll just open it up for discussion. So there are some things that I want to share with you up front, kind of where this even came from. So as Donna mentioned, I've been at IBM 15 years, and I was a year or two into my career when I realized I came up on my first, at the time it was PBC review, end of year review, and I realized I hadn't been keeping track of my accomplishments or the projects I had worked on throughout the year. And so I was going back and looking in my calendar to see what even meetings I attended and what projects I worked on at the beginning of the year. And that was my aha moment of, wow, I really need to start making time to reflect and keep track of these things on a regular basis so that I am not, scurrying around at the end of the year trying to pull this together. So that was my realization. And about a year later, I'd started to practice this. I was in Dubuque, Iowa. We had a delivery center there. I was in part of GTS, which is now Kyndryl. And I owned recruiting and staffing for our center and worked with the local community college to create an IT certification program. And that college actually hired me to come in and teach 15 hours of soft skill training because my education and background is communications. So I decided I needed one more topic for those 15 hours. And I said, I'm going to just put together a class on, at the time I called it promoting yourself. And it was all around this topic. Since then, over the last 15 years, it's morphed. It's not just about you and promoting yourself, but that is the first step. Now it's kind of transformed into, once you have start to get your needs met, you can start to advocate for others as well. And so we'll talk about that a little bit today. But that is where this session came from. I delivered it as part of that IT certification program. IBMers were going through that program and they said, hey, we could really use this. My team really needs to hear this message. So I started giving it locally there in Dubuque and then globally, virtually sessions as well. I've talked about this topic at, keynote speeches, women's conferences, things like that. But it's one that really resonates with people. And it's also one that can be uncomfortable. So enough talking about the topic, let's actually get into it. So I will say that since I have talked to 40,000 people about this topic, I hear some common excuses that people tell themselves on why they should not be an advocate or promote themselves or talk about the value that they bring. The very first one is, my work should speak for itself. So that's an excuse that people will say, or that maybe it's their culture or how they were raised is what they believe. The second is, my leader will promote me when the time is right. And the third, this is uncomfortable. What if people think I'm bragging or that I'm full of myself? So these are three excuses that my hope by the end of our time together, you will no longer believe these things. You will be convinced that these excuses are not good enough. They are not worth keeping you from getting what you want in your career and life. So we'll test it out. At the end, we'll have a conversation and you can tell me if you're convinced or not. All right. Another three is the personas. These are the three personas we're going to talk about today. Mainly, we're focusing on the employee here. You as an employee, whether you're an individual contributor or lead a team, we're going to talk about what you can do as an employee to make sure that you are advocating for yourself. Then we'll talk about the manager and mentor and their role, as well as the overall senior leadership team in creating a culture that really recognizes people who understand their value. So our goals today going into this, one is my hope for you is that you start to realize the value you bring into your role, to your clients, to your stakeholders, etc. And two, you will have what you need, the confidence and the tools after today's sessions to be able to start to communicate your value to the people who can help you get what you want in your career. Those are the goals for today. All right. So, focusing on the employee, we are covering why, what, when, and how of advocating for yourself and others. Let's start with the why. Why should you promote or sell yourself in your work? Here are some different examples. Competition, obviously, whether it's in the industry or within our teams at IBM, we are competitive. We need to be growth minded. We need to be constantly raising the bar. And to do that, we want to advance in our careers as well. So one of the reasons why you want to start promoting yourself is so you can keep up and you can continue to grow as a professional. If you don't know your value and communicate your value, who will? Why will anyone be confident if you are not confident in that you are delivering value to your stakeholders? And how will someone know? You may think, I'm doing a great job. My work should speak for itself. But if your manager has several different people who report to them, or maybe your direct manager is not even involved in your day-to-day work that you do with your client, you need to make sure that you are communicating to those people the value that you are bringing in your role. Don't assume that they know. There could be some negative perceptions if you do not proactively share, hey, here's some, here's the value I've been bringing. There could be a perception that maybe you're not interested in your work. Maybe you don't have confidence that you are making a difference. Maybe that you don't understand how what you're doing impacts the overall business objectives. Or maybe even if you're not talking about your accomplishments, then maybe you don't have any. Again, this is just a perception, a negative perception from you not willing to share what you've done, what you're working on, what you're excited about. Turn it around some positives. Getting a higher end of your rating, if you are able to throughout the year share your accomplishments, your leader is more likely to understand the value you're bringing the business. To get a promotion you are seeking could be a reason why you want to start doing this. To get a higher salary, drive higher value and results for your company and clients. All of these are reasons of why. But you have to answer your why question. What is it that you want in your career? Do you want a promotion? Do you want to take on new opportunities or learn new skills? Whatever it is, whatever your why is, you need to communicate it to your leader or to your network so that they know what your interests are and what you're looking to do. And I have a story that I want to share with you on, I mentioned I've taught this class for 10 years. And just a few years ago, I made the mistake of assuming my leader knew what I wanted in my career, my why. I just finished up I helped lead the communications to roll out IBM Sales Cloud to our sales organization. And I just wrapped that project up and I was really kind of looking for my next opportunity. And so I proactively set up, at the urging of my mentor, I set up a 30-minute career conversation with my vice president. And we got into the meeting and he said, this is great timing. I'm actually taking your name forward in our top talent review next week. And I was really excited to hear that. But then he said, I'm going to recommend that you do communications for a senior vice president. And while that might sound amazing to some of you, for me, it did not align with what I actually wanted to do in my career. I thought he knew that I wanted to go back to leading a team and be in a leadership role. but he had just seen me do very well in this communications role, leading this project. So he had made the assumption that I wanted to do communications. And so from our conversation, he decided, we together decided he would change his recommendation for me to be a chief of staff to a senior executive. So we left that meeting, and then 3 weeks later, I received like the opportunity of a lifetime to interview with Arvind and work in his office. And it all came from that one conversation that I had set up with my vice president to talk about my career and to make sure he knew what I wanted. So that's why it's so important to not assume that they know. You have to say it out loud. I'm just going to stop here to see if I don't know if anyone's monitoring the chat or any comments.
I am indeed.
Can do comments at the end, whatever you think is best.
There is a great comment that I think is relevant to what you're talking about right now from Susan Esposito. If your coach is not assigned to your project, is Checkpoint the best way to make sure they're aware of what you're doing?
So actually, and that's a great question because Checkpoint has actually gone away. And I know that HR is, I believe, going to be probably announcing a replacement tool or process or something in the near future, but you should not wait for that. What I personally do is I have a box note where I keep track of all my accomplishments, and I regularly review that with my leader. So, and we'll talk about that on when you should do it. But Checkpoint no is not the answer anymore. Before it might have been, but you do need some type of common repository or space where you can keep track of what you're working on and even review it on a regular basis. So absolutely. And we're going to be talking about that as an action for everybody to take out of this session. Okay. I'm going to keep going forward. Yep.
Yep, go ahead.
All right. So now we're moving on to the what. Now that we know, okay, what it is that you want in your career, we're going to talk about like, what are you talking about? What am I supposed to be promoting about myself? So here's some examples. When you receive a kudos or thanks, if it's from a client or even another internal IBM team that you're helping, I get it. You may think, oh, they were thanking me for doing my job. But the fact is they took the time out of their day to make sure that you knew that you made a difference to them. You provided them a good experience. So anytime you receive a kudos and thanks, you need to share that. Maybe it's just forwarding it to your manager, or maybe it's just keeping track of it in a box note. You need to make sure that you are bringing that, making it visible, and you're not waiting until the end of the year. You're sharing it in real time when it happens. When you accomplish a milestone or meet a commitment, maybe you finish a project 2 weeks early and under budget. That's a great one. Maybe you just signed a deal, or you added scope into the deal that you're working on out of a new opportunity that you initiated. All of those are amazing examples and things that you want to bring to their attention. When you show empathy, helpfulness, and compassion, and when you take initiative to go beyond what is expected. Another story for you. When I became a manager at IBM, I was managing 5 smaller teams, but it was like 25, 30 people total. And as a manager, it was impossible for me to know every single thing that they were working on. So what we did is we have monthly one-on-ones. And during those one-on-ones, I showed up as the manager without anything. I was just there to listen. And the employee brought forward a list of their accomplishments, ideas, challenges they were having, anything they wanted to talk about around skills or career, whatever it was, this was their time to do that. And the first month that we implemented this, a woman named Padma on my team told me this incredible story where we got a ticket into our team's queue. She realized right away it was an issue that our team could not resolve. It belonged with another team. But she also noticed that this client had been bounced around to like 5 different teams and was probably getting pretty frustrated. So she picked up the phone and called them and listened to their frustration and their problem. And then she went above and beyond what our process called for. It called for her just transferring the ticket to the right team. But instead, she called up that team and did a warm transfer with the client to make sure that that the client, excuse me, got their issue resolved as soon as possible. And she told me the story and it just blew my mind. One, because it was so amazing that she took the time to really care about the client's experience. But two, because chances are this is not the first time she's ever done that, but it's the first time I knew about it. And it's because we had implemented this new format into our one-on-ones where it was expected that the employee brought forward their accomplishments. So don't wait and don't think that your manager will know. Bring those stories forward because your manager wants to know about them. It can only help them understand the value you're bringing and also help them understand the value their organization's bringing that they can elevate to their leader. All right, what else should you promote or sell about yourself and your work? We've made a possible impact on your team, company, and customers. Maybe you had an idea that isn't in the current project you're working on, but you have an idea of how we can make it better for a client or a new opportunity. When you've overcome challenges and obstacles, so it's not only the amazing shiny moments, it's also the really hard ones that you get through that really can showcase your problem solving and your collaboration and your leadership. Those are awesome examples for you to show the value that you're bringing your team or your project. Okay, so those are the what. Those are the types of things that you should be sharing on a regular basis with your leader and stakeholders. And when? When should you do this? In interviews, I think most of us will find ourselves in some type of interview in the future. That is the moment to shine, to really show the value that you've been bringing. But also in one-on-ones with your leader or your manager or whoever it is that is making decisions on your career. And also at the time that you receive kudos or thanks, you accomplish your milestone or you overcome your challenges. Do not be like me 2 years into my career when I waited until December to figure out what I did that year. Communicate it all throughout the year because your managers and leaders are making decisions about who's getting new opportunities, who's getting a pay increase, who's getting a promotion throughout the year. They're not waiting until the end of the year to decide. So you need to make sure you're communicating regularly. So effective and frequent communication, consistently reviewing your progress, whether it's monthly or quarterly, whatever makes sense for you. All right, so the hardest part is coming up, the how. How do you do this? How do you show your value? So I'm going to talk to a few slides here, and then I would love to actually talk through an example with a volunteer and we'll talk through the first job you ever had, which could be when you were a teenager. All right, so how? Relating your accomplishment back to the impact and results. So you can answer these questions. Why is this important? What did I do? Who did I help? And what improvement did it make? Is there data to support this improvement or achievement? So are there quantifiable measurements? Maybe there's data that exists today that can show your value, or maybe there's measurements you can put in place to capture that value going forward. So how can you show and measure the value of your work is the question. And we're going to give an example here of why it needs to be either qualitative, which could be feedback, or quantitative, which is using data. Because one of the excuses we heard was, this makes me uncomfortable. What if people think I'm bragging or full of myself? The easiest, most effective way to show your value without sounding braggy is to use data, because data and facts are not opinion. It is just proof of the value that you're bringing. So how do we do that? Here's an example. This is a woman drinking coffee. A lot of people think, oh, the coffee is the thing, is the value. The coffee is not actually the value. The coffee is the vehicle to the value. The value here, the outcome here is actually the energy that she gets from drinking the coffee. Maybe it's the taste or smell that she likes. Maybe it's the social interactions that she gets when she goes to the coffee house, right? Those are the actual outcomes. The coffee is just how she did that. A lot of times when we are creating our resumes, we list out tasks that we completed. Or if we're creating a list of our accomplishments for your monthly review, you might put a bunch of tasks that you did. I want you to think about the outcome from those tasks, not just the tasks you completed. Here's some work examples. So I could say before this meeting, or before this year, I created slides on promoting yourself at IBM. That's what I did. It's true. But does that show the value? How about this? I inspired over 10,000 IBMers last year to communicate their value, the value of their work, and drive better results for their company. That talks about what was it the impact of my actions. It's not just that I create a presentation. Anybody can do that. But it's actually, what did it mean for my fellow IBMers and for IBM? Another example, a woman that I mentor came to me and I asked her, okay, what do you do? And she said, well, I create dashboards for executives. And I said, she's a data scientist. And I said, okay, well, what value does that bring them? And when I asked a few different questions, she couldn't tell me. She didn't have all the information of how those dashboards were bringing value to her stakeholders. So we decided she was going to go back and do some stakeholder interviews to better understand. And it turns out she enables over 50 executives to measure key business indicators and make real-time decisions to drive higher revenue. And they never had these insights before she came in and did this for them. So that is much better, right, than just developing or creating a dashboard. No, that's not the value. Creating a dashboard is not the value. The driving higher revenue and empowering and enabling 50 executives, that is the value. So as you go through and think about your role, think about the value and the outcomes you are driving, not just the task you are doing. There is an equation or formula for this. It's out of a book. It's accomplished X as measured by Y by doing Z. So if you need a way to start there. Accomplished X but as measured by Y by doing Z. Okay. So I would love to see if there is a volunteer here that can talk through just a couple questions with me. And I don't know if someone wants to raise their hand and then you can take them off mute or pull them up to be a panelist maybe.
Yep, I'm looking for a hand raise.
Anybody? It's super easy, no pressure.
Hey, Ashley, while we're waiting for volunteer, this is Donna. I just wanted to chime in with a quick story that illustrates what you just talked about the value and impact. There's a great story with JFK when we were at NASA, and he ran across a janitor basically who was like mopping the floors, and he asked him, "What are you doing? What do you do here?" That kind of thing, and he said, "I'm putting a man on the moon." And so no matter what your role is, he understood really what it was about and what the impact, even mopping floors or taking trash out, he was putting a man on the moon. So I just think that's a cool story.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Yes. And that's the thing we look at, what are IBM's goals? IBM's goals are drive revenue, create cash flow, right? Consulting, I know you're also focused on profitability. How can you do things more productively? Consulting advantage, et cetera. How can you use Gen AI to do your jobs better and faster? All of those are great examples of the outcomes that you're looking to drive. So I love that story of the janitor at NASA. That's awesome.
All right, we have our volunteer chosen and unmuted, Mary Sylvester. You're on deck.
Yes, hello everyone.
Hey, Mary. Okay, so what was the first job you ever had?
So I worked at a dry cleaners on Saturday.
Love it. Okay, so you worked at a dry cleaners on Saturday. How did you know you were doing a good job?
I balanced the till or the cash register at the
Okay.
end, and I took in all of the clothes and gave out all the clothes to the right customers.
Okay, perfect. So if your leader or the owner of that cleaning service, if they were making decisions on who should get a promotion or a pay increase, like why would they say that you deserved it based on your job performance?
I would say it was because I had great customer service.
Okay. So if you wanted to really convince them that you deserved a pay increase, how could you have measured your performance? Qualitative, it sounds like customer service, maybe, and then quantitatively as well. Like, what are some things maybe, like, obviously, you were probably what, a teenager or in
Yes,
college when you worked there, so you weren't thinking like this, right?
right.
But in any job, you can do this, right? So if
Right.
you wanted to get some data or some information to make the argument you deserved a pay increase in this job, like brainstorm with me for a second. What are some things maybe you could have put in place to measure that?
So I think from a qualitative standpoint, like you mentioned, the customer service, I could have tallied the number of customers I saw, number of clothes that I gave back out. Obviously, the other side part of being in working at a dry cleaners, you had to make sure there was nothing in the pockets, right? You didn't want a pin to go through the dry cleaner and ruin the clothes and maybe everybody else's clothes. So, assuming no complaints in that regard. I could have tallied, occasionally we didn't have the clothes, right? It does happen. So I could have tried to understand and maybe problem solved when that occurred instead of just leaving a note for the boss.
Yeah, I love that. I
And
love
then,
that.
yeah, and then quantitatively, balancing the cash register, every time that I worked, meant doing, I could have done like a tally where I had, you obviously when you get the cash register drawer out of the safe, you count the money to make sure it's all there. Then you run your whole day and you count the cash and tally out all of the money you took in. And, if you had done that, consistently over several Saturdays, you would be able to have some quantitative data that shows that you've done this very consistently in a trustworthy manner.
Yes, I love it. Mary, this is like one of my favorite examples that we've done. You understood the assignment, so thank you very much for that. Um, I will just share one other example from a previous session that I've done, which is I did this with a group of IBM interns a few years ago, and a woman, Brittany, I reluctantly volunteered. She probably was voluntold more like it. And it was kind of like pulling teeth to get information out of her, but her first job ever was as a camp counselor. And at first she said, "Oh, I took kids to activities." And I kept asking, "Well, like what kinds of activities? How many kids?" And it turns out she was really downplaying it. She was responsible for the lives of 30 kindergarteners, and she took them to learn life skills like swimming. So that was really the value of, she didn't just like take kids to activities. Like that was really more narrowing in what specifically she did. And then when I started asking her similar questions to Mary of how did the camp owners know that you were doing a good job? Or how did you know? And she said she knew because parents were happy. And when I asked how did the camp counselors know or the camp owners know? And she said, well, I think they just knew there weren't really complaints or anything. And then I asked the question, how many camp counselors were there? And she said there were 50 of them. And I asked, when they are making decisions on which camp counselor should get a pay increase next year, why would they think of you? And that is when the light bulb went off. And she said, oh, wow, they wouldn't have thought of me because I wasn't communicating any of the good things I had been doing or how happy people were. And so we started talking through how she could have done that. And we came up with like, she could have figured out how many kids returned each year that she was the camp counselor for, how many of them had siblings that increased their revenue because they brought their siblings around along the next year. So we started thinking through the same things that Mary was just thinking through. And it was just a real kind of aha moment for her. She knew she was doing a great job, and she assumed that the camp owners also knew. But when she started to realize that they were making decisions about who got more money, she realized like she could have done more to promote herself and the value she was bringing. Obviously, as a 16 or 18-year-old, we aren't really thinking about that all the time. But now that we're in corporate life, right, these are things that can help us get what we want in our careers. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the last two personas, and then I think we'll be opening it up for discussion. So we talked a lot about the employee and what that means to you as either individual contributor or just you in your own career. The manager, I have to say, as a manager, it is a dream if you have a team of self-promoters, people who know the value they're bringing and review that with you on a regular basis. You then have this whole like list of things that you can bring to your management to show them, look at the value each of my employees is doing. It also helps the manager when they're making arguments on who gets an equity award, who gets a raise. They have data and information they can use to justify those decisions. It also helps the manager show the value they as a leader are bringing because of look at all these amazing things their organization is doing. And then the leadership team's role is really to create this culture where they are recognizing and rewarding people who know their value and can communicate it in an effective way. So those are the different kind of personas and their roles that we have in creating this culture where we can be proud of what we do. We know the value we're bringing. We know how it relates to our big objectives as the company. And we are willing and courageous enough to communicate it in a way to get what we want and to help our company and our clients succeed. So I want you to make a plan based on what we talked about today. I just want you to think about what are some new actions that you're going to take to advocate for yourself and or others, because as a manager, your role is to also advocate for others, or even not a manager, doing, mentoring sessions as a mentor. How can you help others? How can you be a sponsor for people when they're not in the room? How can you advocate for them and help guide them on ways that they can really grow their skills and navigate inside the company or new roles and opportunities? So what new actions are you going to take? Think about that. And I think we will now just turn it over to have a discussion.
And for anyone who has questions, please either raise your hand or you can also post in the chat if your audio isn't working for you or you just don't feel like talking today. Either is fine.
And I think as you're asking questions, think about the 3 excuses. Do you still believe them or not, right? One excuse was, my work should speak for itself. I told you a couple stories of, as a manager, I would not have known what my employees were doing had they not shared them. My boss will promote me when the time is right. The story of my boss didn't realize what I actually wanted in my career. I had to tell him. And the third was, this is uncomfortable and people might think I'm bragging. I do have one more point I'd like to make on that, which is the more you put yourself out there, and whether it's sharing your expertise or or just like showing what you're interested in. Maybe it's posting on LinkedIn about a project that you worked on that was really awesome. The moment you put yourself out there and start to share your interests and your expertise is the moment new opportunities start coming to you and people start thinking of you because they realize, oh, she worked on something similar to this. Maybe she'd be interested. But it also is the moment that you inspire other people to start sharing as well. And if you still are hesitant to post something, or share something because you think people will think you're bragging. Using data can help you, right? It takes opinion out of it. But also you can also frame it as we instead of me. So talking about how your team accomplished something, it makes it seem like maybe it wasn't just you. I've even done that when it was me who accomplished the thing, but I didn't want to sound too braggy. I said, look what we did. But my last question for you is, the people that you think are going to judge you or think that you're bragging, are their opinions worth you not getting what you want, not getting a promotion or pay increase? I don't think they probably are, but that is a decision you have to make for yourself. Okay.
Yep. I do have a great question from the chat from Corey.
Okay.
Do you ever use quotes or feedback from your mentors in your own accomplishments and successes? So when you're talking about your accomplishments and successes, you do kind of the movie poster thing of 5 stars says New York Post or whatever.
Yeah. So I'm not sure I understand about the mentor aspect of it, but absolutely, like getting any feedback you're getting from anybody, you can keep track of that and use those quotes and reviews with your leader, right? Of anyone who's saying thank you, like I'm excited to what a comment that someone says, this is one of the best trainings in a while. Like that's amazing. And it's something that I hope I plan to probably share with my manager, right?
And
To let her know that this is effective.
Corey just raised their hand. So I've got Corey, you are now unmuted.
I think you answered my question. It was just whether or not when you're meeting with your mentors and they're giving you positive feedback or comments, are you quoting that in like your checkpoints, your PVCs when you're doing them at the end of the year? Or do you kind of leave that isolated? That's a totally separate thing.
Yeah, so I think with a mentor, I'm not sure because unless like there's someone that you're bringing value to, it may not be as effective. But if it's a stakeholder, like honestly, one way to do this, if you can send out a feedback request or a survey to people that you work with and help, and you can use those quotes and that feedback in your reviews with your manager to show the value you're bringing. A mentor might play a different role, right? If a mentor is someone that you work directly with, then yes, you could use their feedback. But I would go for more, who are the people that you're bringing value to? Those are the people that you want to show what that value was.
Perfect.
Your
Thank you.
clients,
Awesome
like
answer.
if you ever get an email from a client, that's great to share and forward on to your managers and coaches and that type of thing.
Yeah, I do that now with that kind of stuff, but it was just whether or not you're meeting with your mentors and they're raving
Yeah.
about you or your progress and stuff. Do you ever include that, or is that kind of a separate task? And I think you've answered that. Is what value is it bringing?
Yeah, in your role, right? Exactly.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent question, Corey. Thank you so much. I have a question that was sent privately, so I'll keep the who private.
Okay.
Any suggestions for navigating non-responsive managers who you barely interact with?
Yes.
My badges are often pending approval. Evidence is needed to obtain those badges. Are close to meeting the time requirements. Should I opt to get a mentor or jump to my manager's manager?
Those can be really tough situations. And sometimes you have to proactively say, and you can even use me as an excuse, by the way. You can say, I just attended this class at IBM, and they told me I need to be reviewing my accomplishments regularly with you. Do you mind if I set up 30 minutes a quarter to focus on my accomplishments and like my priorities for the next quarter? So you can even use this as an excuse of why you need to meet with them regularly. To your point about like badges and stuff like that. So yeah, that might be a separate problem that you need to better understand. And maybe it's just, I've noticed, maybe you say something like, I've noticed that, you know, the badges that I've completed haven't been approved yet. They're running close to being expired. Is there anything I can do to help you get those approved? Right. So just bringing it to their attention and letting them know, like, you want to understand the situation, maybe not being accusatory, like, hey, you haven't approved this yet, but just asking them, like, explaining why you need it. And, but again, I also know there are some not great managers. I'm just going to say it. And there are times when you do have to go maybe do a skip level and share, like, you know, share just your experiences or like where you might need help. Sometimes that is necessary. But a mentor is great to work through those situations with as well, to figure out what is the best approach to take.
And to follow up, one of the follow-up comments in the chat about doing a skip level where you speak to
Right.
people further up your
Exactly.
management chain of command, I have found that incredibly valuable to just be known, be seen, talk to
Yeah.
people all the way up your chain of command. Because if they're seeing you, your manager knows you're important enough to be paying attention to.
Yeah. Donna, did you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to interject on this question, a couple added tips here. So depending on what level your coach or manager is, if they're senior level enough to have an EA, like an assistant, you can work through them to get things approved, because a lot of times they're super busy and they're just administratively, they don't have time for the administrative stuff. So working through them can be helpful. The other thing I will say, if you've tried these different strategies, I definitely recommend what Ashley said. I would second that as far as setting up a regular meeting with them, because a lot of times people don't have time to respond to emails, or they're getting a zillion emails to approve stuff and they don't have time to get to that. So if you set up a meeting and can say, hey, can you do this? Sometimes they can do it right when they're on the phone with you, because it's like, hey, can you just go in and approve this? The other thing, that if all else fails and that manager is not able to do those sorts of things for you and advocate for you, you can request to switch to a different manager. I mean, that can absolutely be done. And so that is an option if you continue to have trouble and other strategies are not working. And another thing that I would add, just back to the context of the work, for if we have any PMs out there on the calls or DPEs, when I was in that role for many years at IBM, what I did to really help my team understand the value and the impact of what they were doing, you know, I did like monthly all hands meetings and I talked about the value we were bringing to the client. I worked on anti-terrorism programs. And so, you know, I said, whether you're writing a line of a code, whether you're an analyst, a tester, whatever your role is, you basically are keeping terrorists off of airplanes. That's what you're doing every day. So I think as like a manager and coach, from that perspective, we can really help our teams understand the impact, because a lot of times in our senior roles, we know the context of what we're doing and we're meeting with the client and we understand that. But when you're sitting there coding all day, developing, you may not get that bigger picture of that context. So I think it's really important for us as leaders to help our teams understand the importance of what they're doing, the impact that they're having, and the value. So I think we can help from that perspective.
Yeah.
Yep. I have a comment again that was also sent to me privately, less of a question, but more of a commenting on how in college a lot of students are starting to get the importance of networking and branding. And so they just wanted to shout out that it's really good that we're doing this here today. So extra kudos to you there, Ashley.
So there's another point here. I think in previous years, decades at IBM, it's been like taboo to talk about what you do outside of the company. Like, it was, you know, people didn't talk about it because it was confidential or whatever. And obviously we don't talk about confidential information outside of the company, but IBM needs us to be thought leaders outside of IBM and seen as thought leaders that people want to work with. And so it actually is part of an IBMer's role to like share your experiences and your expertise. And whether it's like on LinkedIn or speaking on a panel at a local event, or even just inside IBM sharing, like you just completed a project and you have some lessons learned that you think other people could benefit from, set up a lunch and learn session with your organization and share those. All of those are ways that you can really share your expertise. Every single person on this call has something they can teach someone else and that they would benefit from. So I would say that's one of the best things you can do for your career and while helping others, is to share your expertise and put yourself out there. And I saw someone ask about like planning for your next role. That's another way to do it, is you are putting yourself out there, you're showing areas that you might be interested in, networking, getting to know people, and maybe projects, maybe asking your leader, is there a cross organization project happening that I can participate in? That helps you get more visibility. It exposes you to other teams and other projects and challenges that they're having. And it's just a great way to kind of see bigger than what's just the team that you're working on.
I got, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, Michael. I think along with that point is, we talked a lot about self-advocacy with our manager, our coach, with our, direct line reporting, but we're such a matrix organization. I think it's really important that we're sharing it beyond just our direct line, right? So that a lot of times we're in matrix. So you may have a project manager. It's important for them to understand, but as well as your coach and your service line. And even maybe your manager's manager, but your second line. So just, I think, making sure that you're self-advocating beyond just one person, right? And it's like advocating across your network is really important.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Absolutely. In fact, it's how I found my current position, out of a completely separate vertical and completely separate space, by sharing what I do, by talking, by building eminence. All of
Yes.
these things are vital. I got two questions in the same vein around finding a mentor. One was, how do I find one, which is your guides at IBM.
Yep.
But the second one specifically for you, Ashley, was how would you ask for a mentor, and what do you look for in a good mentor?
All right. So I have had a lot of different types of mentors in my life, and I don't know if some of you have heard the term of creating like your board of directors, like different people in different roles. So I typically like to have someone who is kind of in my space a little bit, because they know the players and the people and like the different situations that we have. So it's nice to have someone just to bounce ideas around with and to understand your work situation. It's also really good to have people outside of your business unit. My like official mentor is in HR, and he became my mentor because he came to my organization's all hands and presented about a topic that I was really interested in. And I messaged my manager and I was like, who is this guy? And she knew him and she said, what if I asked him to be your mentor? And so that's how we met. And I was especially working, I was like navigating, what am I going to do next? It was the pre-Arvind office job. And he really helped me through that. And he's the one who encouraged me to set up that career conversation that led to the job. So that was just someone came and talked about a topic I was interested in. I thought I could learn from this person. So I asked them, like, would you be willing to be my mentor? And I knew my boss knew him, so I actually had her ask him. So sometimes you can just say, hey, I see you posting on LinkedIn. I'm really interested in what you have to say. Would you be willing to meet with me? And if when you meet and you have like you connect, that's a good situation. I've also had people reach out to me through your guides and ask me to be a mentor, and we meet like once or twice and it doesn't really go beyond that. I don't know if it's because of me or if it's just they realize it's not a good fit, or they got what they needed out of a couple conversations and now they're good. So I think there are different kinds of mentors you can have. Some are more longer term, some are just people to bounce ideas off of, but it's a really good idea to have a diverse group, including people outside of the company even. And the last thing of advice that I can do better at is I heard on a panel, actually, there was a women's panel at Think last year, and she was the leader of Chief. And she said, your mentors should not look like you, or your network should not just look like you. And I looked at my mentors, and a lot of them were white women. And so that is something that I am working to change, is to make sure that I have a diverse group of mentors.
There was a comment I received in my chat earlier that leads into that. It said, I had one manager say to use I and not we, and another manager who said the opposite during performance reviews. What is the right thing to do here? And I think it comes from that old guard monoculture IT versus the world of the cloud, where diversity and coming to diverse answers involves we more than I.
So, okay, I think there's two different situations. In a performance review, you say I did this. I did this.
Yes.
If you're sharing on social media and you don't want people to think you're bragging too much, say we. It's fine. It still shows that you brought value and you have those type of skills and credibility. But in a performance review, you are talking about yourself, and you're actually talking about yourself compared to your peers. You are, because that's how they make decisions around pay and promotions. Is you are competing. We are one team moving in the same boat towards the same goals, but some of us are stronger rowers than the other one. So, and we need to make sure that we're standing out and differentiating ourselves. So I in performance reviews, we in other situations, if you don't want to sound braggy.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that's one of the biggest thing I learned when I went through the partner promotion process was really needing to talk about I, and I tended to use we a lot, and that was part of the coaching that I received, because it's like, hey, if we're promoting you to executive, we want to know what you're doing, not you, because I talked about my team a lot because I led a very large team. And so yes, when you're agree 100%, when we're talking about performance reviews, the people need to understand what your specific role is in that and what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to Christine White's point there in the comments, on a package using I instead of we, for the promotion packages, especially into the executive realm.
Yes.
And I think that's where that division comes in. If you're on a call where your team is there with you, you use we, and you lift them
Good
up.
point.
Not take credit for other people's work at the same
Absolutely.
time.
Exactly. But yeah, when you're on the call with one-on-one and you're, looking for that next promotion, you led that team, you get some of that, you get that credit, and you say, I led a team to do X with whatever success metric you had for that goal. So you put I on the front of that to show that you had that leadership skill.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. I think we have a minute left. So Donna, I don't know if I turn back over to you.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Ashley, so much for this was an excellent session. It was great meeting you. I would love to work with you a little bit more, and hopefully our paths will cross again. And Michael, thank you. You're always great at hosting these sessions. I love the radio voice, so you're a great facilitator. So, and thanks to everyone that joined. I looked at the participant count as we went up. I think we were near 200 at some point. So thank you to everyone for joining. And Ashley, thanks again for your time. We appreciate it. You guys have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks to everybody who joined us. Come join us again next month. Have a wonderful day and go advocate for yourself.
Yes.